Way back in 2015, I finished my first ever game. It's a visual novel made using RamPy for an RPGmaker.net game jam. I was 15 at the time, and my discipline was at its highest. I worked really hard on this game, spending hours every day over 3 weeks during one of my school holidays. I've made a couple of other games since then, but only in groups, and they were also mostly school projects, so I was obligated to finish those if I wanted to graduate. But besides that, I will always give up on a game project within the first 3 hours. For the longest time, this visual novel I made 8 years ago has been the pinnacle of my solo free time projects, and I wanted to change that. Staying motivated is difficult. Whenever I have an idea for a game, I create a new project, work on it for about an hour and then close it to do literally anything else. And this project will never see the light of day. I guess what's missing when working alone is outside accountability, since I don't have to worry about deadlines or disappointing my teammates. To artificially create this for myself, I went back to what worked for me 8 years ago. I searched on itch.io for ongoing game jams that had a reasonable duration. And by reasonable, I mean something longer than a week, so I can set aside about 2 hours on weekdays and longer hours on weekends. I think crunching for a game brings back trauma from when I was working on school projects, and I don't want to inflict that on myself if I'm just doing something in my free time. I wanted a deadline to give some pressure, but not too much pressure, if that makes sense. I went with the jump ship jam. At the time, it had been 1 to 2 weeks since the whole Unity pricing fiasco, and I was already trying out Godot as an alternative game engine. The jam was also a response to the pricing news, since its requirements encouraged participants to try using an engine that they don't have much experience in. It ran for a month, but I only had 17 days left to join it, so I got to work. What I had was a sample platformer project made following this tutorial, and the only change that I did was just adding a sprite and particle effects. This little box here that I drew on a whim kind of inspired the whole game. The jam's theme was strength in numbers, and maybe the game could be about getting tons of cardboard boxes to cushion a fall, like what you would see in stunt work. And this got me thinking about Tokusatsu, which is a Japanese live-action film genre that heavily uses special effects. So stuff like Godzilla, Super Sentai, Power Rangers, and Kamen Rider. I just wanted an excuse to merge my interests together, so I set that to be the theme of the game. The game takes place in a film set, and the player would control all these boxes and get them to the falling area before the stunt actor lands. And in true hero team fashion, each box would have their own skill set, and they would need to work together to traverse through the environment. So we have a box that can jump twice, one that can throw their teammates, and another that pushes their teammates but can't jump. I did plan for 2 other boxes, but I'm only going to do the first 3 for this game jam to keep to the time limit. I didn't exactly plan for it to be a puzzle game, but it kind of went in that direction. Okay, with all that planned, I just needed to add on top of what I already have, which is not that much. At first I thought that I just needed to add a goal and a timer to the scene, and that should be enough for proof of concept. But I still needed to see if the different abilities could complement each other and be combined to create an interesting solution to a puzzle. So I worked on the pushing box and logic, thought it was fully working, and took a break from programming to make the sprites look prettier. I used the proper colour palette to make the art look more vibrant, and also added these little primary coloured stickers to give a nod to Super Sentai. Since all my characters were just a bunch of rectangles, squashing and stretching them in their animations made the movement feel more satisfying. Then I realised that the pushing actually had some issues when the boxes are stacked on top of each other, and spent way too long trying to get this stupid pushing thing to work properly. I also wanted the pushing box to carry around the other boxes on its head, and one way to achieve this would be setting the friction for both these boxes, and the friction would keep them in place when moving, like how you would expect it to in real life. But there is a problem. If the player holds down the movement button while the box is falling next to another one, it just stays in mid-air because the friction is holding the falling box up. I guess I'll need to get all the boxes touching the top of the push box and then move them manually based on the distance changed. And if there are even more boxes on top of that, then I'll have to do this recursively. I used 3 raycasts on top to ensure that I would sufficiently cover the top area of the pushing box. Although looking back, I don't remember why I did this instead of just using an area 2D, so that's something to change in the future. With the pushing box done, I worked on the throwing box, which luckily didn't give as many problems. And finally, I added the stunt actor that jumps into the pile of boxes. Now with all of the elements of the game finished, I put some levels together which looked something like this. While playing this, my mother saw it and said that without any context, this looks kind of morbid. So I definitely had to make sure that I convey the context very clearly to the player. It was now Sunday and the submission is on Tuesday midnight, which means I had the whole of Sunday and about a third of Monday to finish up my game. I spent the whole day doing background sprites and overlaying them on top of the levels, adding little effects like the boxes poofing out of existence when landed on, and a countdown timer before the level actually starts. I placed the control instructions in the world rather than on a separate how to play menu, since that saves development time for me and hopefully makes it more intuitive for the player. Also, all the text that I've placed in the world were really blurry and I didn't know how to fix that. So I just made sprites with the text directly on it, which is not ideal in the long run, but it's going to do for now. I didn't have any name ideas for the game, and I asked my sister for some. She suggested something with TOH since that's the sound that the Showa riders made when jumping. I ended up using this as an acronym and filled in some words that vaguely made sense together. I tried going to sleep for the day, but I was kind of nervous about meeting the deadline, and somehow that gave me an idea for how the title screen could look. I quickly drew this on my notes app for reference before trying to go back to sleep. After I finished work for the day, I referenced my notes app doodle from yesterday to create the title screen. To give the player more context, I initially wanted to write some short dialogue between the boxes and have a cutscene before the start of each level, but due to time constraints I settled for this Minecraft-esque title effect. Then I realised I only had 1 hour till submission, so I did the first submission of the game. Luckily I did this because there were some lag issues whenever particles were being spawned for the first time in a scene. I quickly added a preload for all the particles and thankfully the issue was fixed. I had about 40 minutes left, so I just tried to add in some sound effects, but no pressure if I couldn't finish it since I already had my second submission up there. My sister found the Shin Kamen Rider jump sound effect from this video, complete with the outro music. So I extracted it and put it into the game. Finally, I added the sound effect for the box jumping, and with 6 minutes left, I did a final submission. And that's it, I somehow submitted something, and it only took 8 years. Toss Over Hero is a Tokusatsu-inspired puzzle game, where you guide cardboard boxes to cushion the fall of stunt actors. Players will need to leverage on the unique abilities of each box to get them all into the goal zone, before the timer runs out and a stunt actor falls from the skies, landing into the pile that you've made. There are 4 stages to complete and it takes less than 5 minutes to finish the whole game. The voting period lasted for a week after. I tried many other interesting submissions and got a bunch of feedback from the other jam participants, which I'll definitely be adding. In the end, Toss Over Hero ranked 13th and I was really proud of what I made. I don't know if this game is objectively better than the visual novel I made a while back, since it's too different to really compare. But I've put the link to the game submissions in the description and you can let me know which game you think is better in the comments below. Honestly, I'm just really happy that I managed to make something at all, and I do want to continue making more little games in the future. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking around and hope to see you next time.